Tales of Arise. This game has a perfect dodge, so it makes it into parry review because we do those too here. So I hadn't played a Tales game since Tales of Symphonia back in 2004. And when I first played Tales of Arise, I thought, uh-oh, this game's gonna suck! Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to say this game is a banger! So when the game starts out, it's kind of like Star Ocean R, the second story, where you gotta walk into enemies in order to start the fight. You know, fights are like, there's the walking game, which is what the game is when you're speaking or adventuring, and then when you touch an enemy, begins the battle sequence, which is what you're looking at now. But I already knew the game was going to be like that when I first played it. What caught me by surprise is that when you start out the game, you only have a parry, you don't have a counter. I mean, you have a perfect dodge. It works exactly like a parry, so I'm just... forgive me if I keep saying parry, but I might just keep saying parry. So when you start the game, you don't have a riposte, you don't have a reprisal, you don't have a counterattack. You get that later. I think it's through a side quest. I already forgot. I've been playing the game for like 4 hours now, and you get the counter in like the first 30 minutes of the game or something. But basically, when you reach the first town, and by town I mean like a village, there's gonna be like a side quest. You can't miss it. The game forces you to do it. And then after you do that quest, you get the counter. And then after you do that quest, you get the counter. Or maybe it's not a quest thing, but after I did that quest, maybe what happened is that I gained just enough experience to level up and then get the counter skill, because the counter is a skill. Anyway, I'm gonna show you now in the menu what the skill looks like. So here's the skill, it's called Counter Edge. You can look at it in the skills menu, and then you get the air dodge, the air step or whatever, which allows you, originally you can't dodge in the air, but then later you get the skill that lets you do that. So now look at the combat. Here you see you have to approach enemies in order to initiate the combat sequence. You bump into the enemies and then you go into like this little battle arena thing, and all battles work like this, even boss battles. Every single battle in this game works like this. Normally, I'm not a fan of these types of bump into the enemy combat system because it feels kind of like Pokemon. And I like to keep my turn-based games as turn-based games and my action games as action games. Because usually what happens is when you muddy those waters, usually what you get out of it is something bad. A lot of people forget it took until the year 2000 or 2001 until we got one of the really good RPGs, Kingdom Hearts. So it took 2001 years to get an RPG/combat game that could finally blend those two systems together seamlessly. And still to this day, people, developers, they'll do action RPGs and they'll fuck it up. Even though the formula has already, it exists, the wheel exists, and they keep reinventing it and they keep fucking it up sometimes. But, happy to say that Tales of Arise, no such problem. The combat is great. So let's take a look at the combat here. Okay, you bump into the enemies. You're gonna see that, you know, I wait for the enemy to do their attacking animation. Usually they lunge at you, and then I dodge into them, because that makes it easier to trigger the counter, the dodge effect thing. So I'm playing with controller, so in order to dodge, I press the right trigger button. Then once I successfully initiate the perfect dodge, I use the regular attack button, which is R1, and that it does the counter attack, which automatically hones in on the enemy. In fact, something really cool about this game is that if you're locked onto a target and then another enemy attacks you and you perfect dodge the other enemy's attack, your counterattack will then teleport you all the way to the other side of the combat arena if need be, and you will attack the enemy that you are locked onto. So let me just say that again. When you counterattack, your reprisal will attack the enemy that you are locked onto, not the enemy whose dodge you perfect dodged. Now, this is... some of you might think this is a bad thing, and it might be for some players, but I consider this a good thing because sometimes you don't want to be dividing your attention into two enemies. You want to whittle down a single enemy's health bar, and sometimes their attack will make them get away from you, or you'll be forced to dodge, and that'll put some distance between you and the enemy. And so being able to dodge another enemy's attack, and then that allowing you to teleport to the enemy that you're locked onto, really helps you press and keep up that pressure and kill the enemies as quickly, you know, whittle down their health bars the way that you had originally intended to do. Now, the camera in this game isn't always perfect. Sometimes the camera will put you on a weird angle, but it's not that big of a deal because both the dodge button and the attack button are shoulder buttons, so you can be constantly moving the camera. And also in the options menu you can activate the reset camera when you attack enemy, which will just automatically focus the camera on the enemy as soon as you attack the enemy. I don't use that because I like looking at my surroundings so I know who to parry next. So yeah, the combat system in Tales games has come a really long way from Tales of Symphonia. Like, the combat is really mint now. It's very fun. Again, more proof that games, they don't all have to be Souls-like in order to have good combat, fun combat. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I like this combat more than the East 8 or East 9 or East 10. I like this. I like that the perfect dodge has weight to it, you know, that it matters. It matters. I'm playing on the hardest difficulty, so a lot of the enemies are like damage sponges, you know, they take a lot. Especially the bosses, dude, they're just damage sponges. They just absorb every single attack. It takes a million years to kill them, but it feels good. Like, the combat in this game, this is redundant, right? But the combat in this game was made perfectly and specifically for this game, and it works very well. Even though it takes a million years to kill bosses, I'm happy to do it because I enjoy the dodging, and then the reprisal when I get to counter the enemy. And you see that he kind of disappears for a second when you do the perfect dodge. He kind of disappears, right? He kind of dematerializes and then reappears. That's so cool, man. I really like it. Of course, the game doesn't have chain parry, but we know that games aren't Onimusha. The only Unsouled is the only game that has successfully, you know, replicated the Isen. But most enemies, when you do the counterattack, they will stagger. They will stagger. So I like that this game makes the enemies respect the parry. It's like, respect that parry, okay? Like, respect it. Shut the fuck up and respect this parry, okay? I love it. So, Tales of Arise. 8 out of 10 on the parry metric, and 8 out of 10 on the fun and enjoyment scale. Thanks for watching, take care, and enjoy. Oh, and I almost forgot. Yeah, you can parry the bosses too, so you know, it's great.